It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, John, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It could be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later.
Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Babylon 5, 30 years later. My name is John Wilson. This podcast is a journey through the classic science fiction drama Babylon 5 in all of its various forms and incarnations. We are taking every episode exactly 30 years after it was released, and we are myself, John Wilson, and my friend, Blaine Dowler. Hello, Blaine.
Hello, John. How's it going?
It is going just fine. You know, we've been through a lot lately, and I was just hoping that we could celebrate this by you telling me something you've never told anybody, because that's not awkward.
Oh, okay. And
right now on the microphone. Go.
Yes.
We are talking about Ceremonies of Light and Dark. And we are also talking about the episode entitled Ceremonies of Light and Dark. It's the, I think, 11th episode of the season, or is it 12?
It's 11th, yes.
It's 11th. We've had some really big events lately, not to mention a Deep Space Nine fake out last week with the first of the month, followed by some really huge Severed Dreams with Bethany the day after that. And now we're sort of starting to settle into a new status quo, but we can't just do that. We've got to have like assassination attempts and stuff.
Yeah, because that often happens with change. People, question the legality of certain decisions and decide to take over the government themselves to restore the government that they prefer.
Yeah, and sometimes people just storm the Capitol in an attempted, coup of the government, and it doesn't go well, and the would-be president pretends he wasn't behind the whole thing. Anyways, but that's a whole other podcast for a whole other situation. I guess we can get into this. This one was directed by John Flynn III, who, of course, we have seen before, although I can't remember exactly what the last one was that we saw him on.
This is his fourth of 9 episodes of Babylon 5 as director. He is also the primary cinematographer. So his first directing effort was TKO. We have another production connection to TKO.
Weird. We have several weird serendipities going on with this.
Yes, considering we are recording this the day after we released our coverage of TKO.
Right.
So the last episode we saw that he directed was season 2, episode 20, The Long Twilight Struggle. Mm-hmm. So this is his fourth of 9. Aside from season 1, he directs 2 episodes per season for the 5-episode run, or 5-season run.
When we get to 3 more episodes of his, we're going to have Jerry Ryan on the episode as a guest. That'll be his 7th of 9 episodes.
Yes, we'll see what we can do to get Jerry Ryan on to talk about lines of communication about a series she has never had any part of.
I'll call her, see what she says. All right. So let's get into the events of this. It is the fallout of everything. So they have rounded up all of the Night Watch people and basically shipped them off the station. But as they said last episode and remind us this episode, they've only gathered up, of course, the ones they know about, which leaves all the ones they don't, which brings us to the episode's plot. At the same time, we're going to get into that secondary plot in a minute. This episode centers itself around an assassination attempt. There is a group of Night Watch who gathers together, and they say that the word has come down from above that Night Watch is basically supposed to kind of chill out and bide their time, except for the cell that is on Babylon 5. They have the green light to move forward. They are intending to assassinate the Minbari ambassador Delenn. One of the members of this Night Watch group is not given a name. He's just called the Sniper in the credits. And he is a real piece of work because he sort of relishingly recalls torturing Minbari behind the lines. And at one point, he breaks into this sort of weird singing of the foot bones connected to the ankle bone after having just told a story about how he slowly dismembered Minbari. So yeah, he's a whole person and a half. So I just watched this episode literally 5 minutes before we recorded, and some of the details are escaping me. But during the course of the episode, so the way they orchestrate all of this is there is a group of Minbari coming into the station to see how things have been going, and Delenn and Lanier are going down to see it. There's a good conversation between Delenn and Lanier about how he is just going along with all of this, and he's not really, saying anything yay or nay. And she asks him about it, and he's like, well, we're fulfilling prophecy. My opinion on the matter doesn't really enter into things. And it just gives him a chance for him to show his devotion, even though she points out that prophecy is not a very good direction of choices because, prophecies are kind of vague until they actually get fulfilled. Also, there are a lot of prophecies that do not tell good events. So during the greeting of the Minbari, there is some violence, and Delenn is captured along with one of a few of the Minbari captains and VIPs and such. So the Night Watch have taken hostages. There are meetings among our chief officers on how they're going to get them free. Garibaldi points out that the sniper person is a real psycho piece of work who worked behind enemy lines a lot. Marcus is very fiercely devoted to the idea of rescuing Delenn. He and she had a conversation, which plays into the B plot, and he opened himself up to her and made himself vulnerable to her about some things going on in his life and why he was even here in the first place, how he didn't really care about the supposed threats of the shadows until his brother ended up getting killed, and so he blames himself, basically survivor's guilt. And she calls him out on almost the exact words when she describes it. So anyways, she has been captured. Marcus goes into the underworld and starts beating people up and or killing them to try to find out what's going on and who and where they are. He does get word, and so he's able to pass that along. Whenever the heroes do try to come and rescue the hostages, everything looks like it's going okay, but someone does manage to throw a dagger of some sort and hit Delenn square in the back as she is running toward John Sheridan. So now she is, injured and possibly dying and is in the med bay. And it's probably good at this time to talk about the second plot because at this point they start to dovetail. But earlier in the episode, to sort of commemorate the fact that so many things have been happening and so many things are going to be happening, Delenn wants to have a Minbari rebirth ceremony, which they name with the Minbari name, and the word for it is escaping me. But it does involve a lot of their important people coming together, a lot of the special friends coming together and confessing something that they've never said to anybody, and some other things to sort of commemorate a new phase in life. They invite Londo because he's so central to everything, and John Sheridan is kind of surprised that they're inviting him, but she's like, he was the first person I invited because he has been such a big deal for us. But Mollari has no time for it. Jakar has no time for it. And it looks like it's not going to happen because she's now in the hospital after having been stabbed. Lanier says this is not going to be taking place. While she is captured, or either captured or healing up, Lanier and Marcus have a conversation. Lanier says, well, during the rebirth ceremony, I'm supposed to confess something I've never told anyone, so I'm going to tell you I love her. And they have a conversation after the commercial break about the nature of his love. We'll talk more about it in the notes. Basically, he knows that she's romantically going to be involved with somebody else, but that does not change the fact that he is devoted to her and will be by her side, supporting her and helping her with anything she wants to do. So, moving forward, Delenn is going to be, she's going to heal up. Franklin is able to help her. The knife missed all the vital organs, and all of the main characters sort of talk to her about the fact that since they can't have the rebirth ceremony with her healing up, they brought the rebirth ceremony to her, and each one files through and says a confession that in theory they have never told anybody else. Garibaldi confesses that he never knows if he's going to lose control. Franklin admits he might have a problem. Ivanova said that she thinks that she loved Talia. So she had something prepared for them, because one of the concepts running through this episode is, in previous episodes, is that Sheridan is no longer wearing his uniform. He does not feel that he can wear it in the midst of everything that's going on. He can't put on himself a symbol of an institution and a government that he can no longer trust and be loyal to. And it's a really big deal for him. None of the other characters seem to have a big problem with it. They're doing their jobs, but he can't. He only puts on his uniform once because they have a funeral ceremony for all the people who fell in the previous episodes. But at the end of the episode, Delenn tells them, hey, in honor of the rebirth, I had something made for you. And at the end of the episode, all of the main characters go up to the CNC with new uniforms. They look very sharp and different from the main uniforms. There's a bit of a geometric line design on them. We'll talk more about the aesthetics in a minute. But they definitely stand out as being different to all of the other uniforms. There is not even a plot line so much as a scene in this episode that is also very worth mentioning, even though it's unrelated to everything else. And that is that Londo Mollari has a meeting with Lord Rifa. For those who don't remember, Lord Rifa is the person on Centauri Prime who has basically been in charge, nominally under Londo, but not really under Londo, because he has all of the immediate power back home ever since the Emperor died. And Mollari's like, so we're fighting a war on 12 different fronts. And that's redonkulous. We got to stop that. We got to back off. We got to stop trying to take over everything and everywhere. And also, you, Lord Rifa, need to stop talking to Mr. Morden. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Mollari pulls out a video recording he has from a previous episode where Morden says he's been talking to Rifa. And Rifa's like, oh, that Mr. Morden. And he's like, you're going to do this because you're loyal to Centauri, because your people are more important to you than your ambition, and because I've poisoned your drink. So Londo has done the old trick of introducing to Rifa's system 1/2 of a 2/2 poisonous compound. So it's going to go dormant and sit in his intestines until Mollari has cause to bring the other half of the poison into Rifa's system, and then Rifa will die. And the condition is that he needs to stop talking to Mr. Morden. So kind of rambly, because I kind of had some memory problems as I was talking about it all, but that's the gist of the episode. So we are doing Ceremonies of Light and Dark. Ceremonies of Light with the rebirth, Ceremonies of Dark with the revolution? Insurrection. That's the word. What are you thinking of Ceremonies of Light and Dark?
It is actually a nice counterpoint, because after the last three, the adrenaline is there, and going for another heavy action could cause burnout. And while there are definitely action scenes, it's not the action that drives the episode. Mm-hmm. We have how many love stories that are moved forward or closed off? There's Ivanova admitting she loved Talia on screen, which is there partly because Ivanova hadn't admitted that to anyone, possibly even Talia at this point, and partly because there were some fans who didn't read or possibly didn't want to read Talia's last appearance that way, even though, as we discussed at the time,
explicit text is a good thing.
Yeah. We find out Lanier's feelings for Delenn. We get Sheridan's shared secret, where he and Delenn are basically saying, okay, we are now on a romantic path.
Yeah, he holds her hand on her sickbed and is basically like, I realize that you might have gone out of my life without me ever having had the chance to tell you how important you are to me and how I feel about you. And he doesn't say the words, I love you. He doesn't say love, but he does say, I can no longer imagine my life without you in it. And she doesn't actually even verbally respond, but she does hold his hand and smile and gives all nonverbal cues that she's in agreement. It's a very, very sweet moment. I have thoughts on the Lanier moment. I don't know if you want to talk about those now or later.
Yeah, we can get into it. I just wanted to mention the other part we had was Marcus talking about the past love. And part of his motivation here, he said that, he he let down a woman he cared about before, and that will never happen again.
Yes. Yeah, his brother and a woman he loved, both, he's lost a lot in his life. So I realize what they're doing with Lanier, and I like the idea of what they're doing with Lanier. The way it plays on screen, it's almost like my love for her is not just romantic love. It's bigger than that. It's purer than that. It's more important than that. It feels a lot like an adolescent trying to justify his feelings for a girl or a person. And I don't know, just the word choice they used for it felt a little bit silly for me in the way it was done. Part of it also is that Bill Mumy has such a baby face throughout this entire series. But yeah, it felt a little bit silly, although I like the idea that they're going for.
Yes, which was actually partly Bill Mumy's idea. He went to JMS at the end of season 2 and said, I think Lanier's in love with Delenn. And Straczynski's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, okay, he's like the Lancelot, so he knows he's not going to get the girl, but that's where he is. And JMS is like, well, okay, because there's flexibility in the plans. So that was incorporated because Bill Mumy said, I think this is what's happening. This is the way I intend to play it.
Okay, that's interesting. And honestly, it totally works. There are those relationships that people have in their lives where there is somebody who is just that important to them. And the fact that they're never going to be romantically attached, that aspect of their devotion is never going to be requited, they choose not to let that matter. And that's just a thing that some people have. And he has that for her.
Yeah, and you talk about his baby face. I just checked on the IMDb. So Mira Furlan was born September 7th, 1955, and Bill Mumy was born February 1st, 1954.
So he's a year older than she. Well, she looks 5 years older than he does, at least. I don't know. She, when I picture Mira Furlan, I picture her from Lost, where she has aged a little bit more, even though she's not that old in this. It's just when I mentally image her, that's what I think of. She's got a bit more hardness to the face by then.
Yeah, when this comes out, they're both in their 40s.
Okay.
And at least under the Minbari makeup, I would say Delenn easily passes for, say, mid to early 30s, and Lanier passes for mid to late 20s.
He feels like an initiate. He feels like somebody young in his job. And especially when we first meet him, he's kind of halty and stammery and does some dumb stuff, out of ignorance and, naivete in that first season. So he feels very young in his character, whereas she feels older, wiser, more experienced, and kind of ageless.
Yeah, and at this point, because we're seeing more of Mira Furlan's real face, whereas a lot of Bill Mumy's, the areas where we show the human signs of aging are under smooth Minbari makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So Lanier looks younger than Bill Mumy did when they were filming this.
I didn't talk about the cast. We do have Don Stroud as Boggs, who is sort of the leader of the cell, and Paul Perry as the sniper, who is the freakish, weird psycho guy. How did Paul Perry play for you?
He was interesting. Like, the character worked really well on the page in the script.
Mm-hmm.
There was moments of creepiness, but I don't know, there was some kind of disconnect. It felt like he should have been a lot creepier. I read him creepier on the page than I saw on screen, and I can't quite pin down what it is, because I can't look at Paul Perry's performance and say, well, he's deficient in this area, there's a problem here. Like, I don't see any issues with his acting, but yet it's not connecting the way I expected it to.
Okay, I had a very similar reaction, and I don't think his singing that song had quite the effect that they wanted it to have whenever he was singing it, because that should have been or could have been disturbing, and it was more off-putting. And so yeah, okay, so he does come off as he means it and he's not messing around, but he doesn't come off as creepy psycho, kind of wants to tear you apart when you're not looking kind of person, which is what he's playing or what he's saying. But I don't know, yeah, there does feel like a disconnect. We have Kim Strauss as Lennon, who is one of the Minbari. He is captured with Delenn. During the course of the hostage situation, one of the hostages is killed. I don't know if it's Lennon or if somebody else with them.
He's the one that was injured, so he was one of the two in the chair, the one who had loosened his bonds.
Okay.
And then Sniper comes in and says, well, let's tighten them. By the way, I know your language.
Right. I feel like we've seen him before because I recognize this picture. So I don't know if he was possibly in another previous episode.
Kim Strauss is one of the guys that is regularly under alien makeup. So he is one of their go-tos for the bit parts. They know he can handle makeup because the heavy makeup causes a severe claustrophobic reaction in a lot of actors. So he can handle it. He's diverse enough that he's not that easy to recognize under it, especially when his parts are kind of small, so they bring him in for a variety of aliens. So we've seen Kim Strauss and Don Stroud before.
Okay, yeah, looking at his list, he's played lots of Markabs and Narns and possibly no makeup as an ensign and points of departure. All right. So there is a very minor aspect to the story that is kind of played for laughs because there's a little bit of laughter before all of the really gross, horrible stuff starts happening. They are concerned about their communications because if they connect to the communications network, they make themselves vulnerable to basically being hacked by Earth Force. And all their passwords and access codes and everything would then be subject to, perusal. So they do a thing where they change all of their passwords and access codes. And I guess they're going to put also some sort of layer of protection around them. I don't know if they actually say that or whatever, but one of the things they need to do in order to make this effective is to reboot the station computer system. When they do so, an old personality AI overlay that had been attempted to be installed at some point in the past had failed, and so they thought they had stripped it out of the system. Well, turns out it goes into effect with the reboot, and it's this like grousey, complainy, don't want to do my job computer personality that everyone, especially Garibaldi, immediately hates. And the voice of what they call Sparky the computer is Harlan Ellison of sci-fi writing, Star Trek, City on the Edge of Forever, and also frequent creative consultant to the series fame. That Harlan Ellison had a voice role on this episode. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and when he asked J. Michael Straczynski, why me? He said, well, I need someone who can be really, really annoying. So, at which point he said, it's a wonder that we are still friends to this day. And that's what he said at the time of writing. Ellison has since passed, and that's why a lot of his works are now being released in very nice reprint editions. They were such close friends. Straczynski is the executor to Ellison's estate. And one of the things he's said is to make it his mission to have Harlan's work stay in print. And he has made good on that promise to date.
I should probably read some of it at some point. I have never read a single word by Ellison outside of...
Yeah, all I've read so far is the script to City on the Edge of Forever, which it is a good script.
The concerns were valid.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like Star Trek because of some of the story choices, and there's no possible way they could have filmed that on the budget available.
Yep.
So, great story, just not a great fit for the episode.
But it was fun to the storyline itself was a little hokey, but it was a tension reliever. The fact that they brought him in as the voice, I thought was great. We did see Josh Cox as Lieutenant Corwin briefly, which reminded me that he chose the right choice last episode, which we didn't see Zach Allen, but of him and Zach Allen, there are two people that we thought might go the wrong direction in the course of all the events that ended up making the right choice in the end. So that made me happy to see him again. I think it makes sense that we would have people disgruntled about the changeover, not just Night Watch. Like, I feel like in a storyline like this, in a complex world like this, on a station like this, you're going to have a portion of the population that is not happy with the fact that they have just declared themselves a separate and independent state from EarthGov. And there would be some discontent. They're voicing this and exercising this through a terrorist cell, which is fine for the storyline. But I think not only terrorists, I think just other people who are well-meaning and just believe in home, which means they probably believe in some things that aren't that great, but That doesn't mean they're necessarily trying to be bad people.
Yeah, alluding again to or referring again to the January 6th events, with the previous U.S. election, or second previous, I guess, by the time this comes out, because there'll be another one by then for sure. But yeah, there were a lot of people who would have preferred to see Trump in his second term rather than Biden in his first term. I have no idea who's going to win in November, because we're recording this in May. But there's a huge difference between people say, yeah, I would have rather had 4 more years of Trump than I'm going to storm the Capitol and try to force 4 more years of Trump.
Right. Those are two very different things. One is what they call illegal.
Yes. Yeah, one is treason, the other is perfectly natural.
Right. What you do with your feelings is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and of course, those events were the better part of 30 years in the future whenever this came out, but those kinds of events are as old as elected governments. People not being happy with the results and trying to force the matter to go their way.
Yeah, I think it was Stalin who said that elections are not decided by the voters, but by the vote counters.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing, because the allegations of rigged voting systems.
Yeah, and there's, I've got an online friend from Malaysia who's, in previous elections, he has shared footage of military vehicles pulling up at voting stations with half an hour left in the election with boxes and boxes of ballots that they are dumping in.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, and they're coming in with military guards, so you can't sort out which ballots they put in and which ones they weren't, because they're dumping them in, they're mixing them up, and the current regime wins by a landslide.
Right.
So, but as I said, that's Malaysia. We've got the footage of Malaysia. That one's not in question. Everything else that we've heard about that in North America, that's way more speculative.
Yeah.
There's no concrete evidence.
None whatsoever. And lots of evidence to support the opposite.
So back to our fantasy worlds.
Fantasy worlds that have no basis or grounds in actual real world politics.
Especially stuff that, hey, 30 years ago, not
right.
3 or 10 or...
Well, I mean, 30 years before that, was 1964, right? So how many, political difficulties were there and populations not getting a voice and not getting a say? So, it's an ancient and troubled history. But yeah.
Yeah, when people ask JMS, are you referring to these specific events? He's just like, no, I read history. This is echoing, things that happened there and in these 12 other places.
Right. Zach Allen does not read history, though, so he did not know about any of that before all this started. Of course, he's not in this episode. But yeah, so all that to say, it does make sense that people would be upset. They've chosen in the storyline to express that discontent through a terrorist cell, because also sometimes when people are upset, they pick up guns. And that's, not okay. The rebirth ceremony, I don't know, it kind of felt like, instead of a story point, it kind of felt like a story device to open the confession door. Because it's because of the rebirth ceremony that we find out more about Marcus's backstory. We get Lanier's confession. We get some personal moments from all the characters. We get Sheridan's declaration of love, and we get new uniforms. All of those character moments and developments come out of the idea of the rebirth ceremony, but the rebirth ceremony itself doesn't go anywhere because Delenn can't be there for it. So it's kind of an interesting way to make all of that happen as a storytelling choice.
And part of that choice is because, as Delenn says, we've already seen part of this ceremony in Season 1, Episode 5, Parliament of Dreams. This is that ceremony. The
one where she almost but didn't declare her wedding vows to Sinclair?
That's the one. Because had Michael O'Hare been able to stay with the show, he would have been Delenn's love interest. That's where that was heading.
Well, yeah, that's where that was heading. That was very obvious. I think it's funny that she started with one captain, and now through the same ceremony 2 years later, she's getting with the other captain. I don't know. It's an interesting way to tell that story. But of course, the story that Straczynski had was for the commander of the station and Delenn to be together.
Yeah, and because he was planning this break back then, he still needed the rebirth ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So he just kind of ran with it because Sinclair and Delenn, their relationship had not progressed anywhere close to this far.
No.
because you don't have to rush it when you have 5 years.
They didn't have as much time as Sheridan. I mean, Sheridan at this point has been on the show longer than Sinclair was. So
Yep.
Sheridan has had more chance to get close to Delenn than Sinclair did. And if Sinclair had been on the show another season, I find it easy to believe that they would have gotten to this point as well, because there was an affection there. Now, Sinclair had other romantic attachments through the course of the story. We would have had to deal with that before he could move forward with Delenn, which brings up the question of what would have happened to Catherine and everything else. Reminder, kids, Catherine's story is not done. Is it Catherine? It's Catherine, right?
Yeah, Catherine Sakai, the original plan, it would not have gone well for her. We have that in the outline. Elements of her story, because he didn't get to tell that story, some elements were saved. So I don't want to go into detail now because that's spoiling things that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at this point, she wasn't dead, but was almost as unviable as a romantic partner.
So the Catherine Sinclair story would have been ended by now, and the Sinclair Delenn story would have been moving forward by now. But we don't have Sinclair anymore because stuff with that actor. Instead, Sheridan is here. And I don't remember exactly how I felt about Sheridan whenever he came on the station, but just to clear, in case anyone's wondering at home, how does John Wilson feel about Captain Sheridan? He is part and parcel part of the show now. It's hard to remember that there was a Sinclair if not for the fact that I'm rewatching season 1 as we're recording these because of our releases.
Yeah, he integrated quite nicely, actually. And in a lot of ways, it will become relevant in some of the backstory later, but all of the actors in the opening credits are there for a collective agreement. So in the first season, nobody was more famous than the rest, so everyone agreed to get paid the same, which for season 1 was scale. So they got paid the SAG equivalent of minimum wage for each episode that they were in. So if one person's in 22 episodes and there's in 11, one gets paid twice as much total for the year. But their per episode rate was a match. And then the standard is they had 10% per year. And when Boxleitner came in, he was a bigger star who could have asked for more. But he had seen the show, he was a fan of the show, he liked what it was doing, he could see the 5-year arc. He was very interested in playing a character who had a clear arc and well-defined arc. So he agreed to step in on scale as well. So he basically took a massive pay cut because this is a show he wanted to be a part of. Which was nice, because if you've already been the star of, Tron and Scarecrow and Mrs. King, like, if you've been a headliner in film and TV, you can ask for more than minimum wage. And he chose not to. He stepped into the same group agreement as the rest, or collective agreement as the rest.
It might be changing somewhat in the modern era where so much of TV is made like films and so much of theater going is lessened now in the post-COVID world that we live in. But before COVID and before digital streaming and everything, there was definitely a feeling of not necessarily caste, but definitely level between film performers and TV performers, at least in the States. It's different in other places, in the UK and such, I think. But yeah, to have Boxleitner, who was a film actor coming into a TV show, he definitely could have said, well, I deserve the big box. And he did not. But I'm running out of things to say for our league in session with the episode. Had you other thoughts that you wanted to bring out?
Just point out that Den Stroud was Caliban in TKO. So this is Boggs, the leader here, with the scar over his eye. He was Garibaldi's corner man. So this is the second time he's been in here. As far as the structure, we mostly covered it. It was actually I found the three-verse ceremony, like I said, it feels like a plot device, but it's a device that made it natural for a lot of character moments in an action-heavy episode. Right? This is an episode where, early on, we find out that, Marcus runs in the same area as organized crime, but they have this unspoken agreement to leave each other alone. And then when Delenn is in jeopardy, he deals himself in and says, this is what you're going to tell me. And they say, well, if not, what? Well, then in 5 minutes, I'll be the only one standing at this table, and 5 minutes after that, I'll be the only one standing in this bar.
Point of order, when he says that, no one is standing at the table. They're all seated.
Yes, but when he comes back from that, The next time we see him, he knocks someone out, and then looks around and realizes, oh man, I still didn't have the information I wanted, so now I have to wait for someone to wake up, because everybody else in that bar is unconscious at that moment. He made good.
Yeah. I don't know if I would believe it from Marcus's physicality. We have seen him move before. He definitely has some stage fight training to him. But his face definitely has a cast to it that, like, I don't know if I want to be on this guy's bad side. And so you do kind of believe that he could follow through with it in some unexpected ways. So if you cut away from the scene and you cut back and he's surrounded by bodies, it's like, yeah, I can see that happening.
Mm-hmm. We get some of the great lines in the episode, though, which we want to go into. But when, Lanier comes in and finds him, he looks around going, okay, I see that you were trained well on Minbar. Yes, they said I was dealing with a lot of repressed anger. And now, I'm no longer repressed.
And now he has to wait for someone to wake up.
Yep.
So that brings us to our last best hope, our standout character or character moment for the episode. And what are you thinking for this, Blaine?
For this one, I'm going to go a few minutes further in the Marcus storyline to the end where they're trying to figure out what's going on and where everybody is. So we see that the station staff have analyzed the audio from basically the ransom demands, and they've figured out what sector it's in. They don't know the level. And Marcus walks in knowing the level because a kind person volunteered what he's heard, including an incredibly detailed description of one of the people in security, which they turn into a deep fake video to flush the bad guys out. So, yeah, I just like that moment where he comes in and Sheridan's original hunch was correct, where he tells Garibaldi, no, Marcus has his other sources that may not talk to security. Let him do his thing. And he walks in and shows that, yep, his sources were effective. He got half the puzzle.
Yeah, they're putting together the level versus the sector. It was also kind of cool because throughout the show, they've just been saying, like, brown 14, gray 32, chartreuse 75. And you don't really know exactly what's going on there. But, evidently you have your sectors, like your pie slices of the station. And then you have your levels or floors of the station. And that's how they describe locations. So if anyone's still curious about how they describe the station layout, there we go.
So how about you?
So without, bringing down the episode or going into too much detail, the scene where Delenn was talking to Marcus and talks about how he has lost a lot and endured a lot, I found that very relatable. And the last line didn't necessarily resonate with me emotionally, but just kind of resonated with me as like a concept related to the emotions. But she says that you have to forgive yourself. And he's flabbergasted because he's like, what am I going to forgive myself for? And she says, for being alive. So in the midst of all of this that he has lost and honestly blamed himself for. So like whenever she says you have to forgive yourself, there are a couple other things that she could have said there. Just the fact that he feels like they should be alive and he should not be is a big aspect. Sorry, I'm not choking up. I'm literally getting some in my lungs here. The idea is that he feels like they should be alive and he should not be because his own stupidity, his own mistakes should have cost him his life instead of them. So forgiving himself for being alive. I think she made a point that for him was very poignant and to the core of himself. So that's the moment that I came away from. But there are lots of really good character moments through this because, like you said, we both said the rebirth ceremony opened itself up for a lot of nice character moments. Mm-hmm. But so that takes us to the last segment we have of the show where we are addressing the episode, and that is giving form to the dream. This is where we talk about elements in the episode that may or may not feel portentous for the future, but that we definitely would want to not forget and put a pin in for later. So what did you have coming out of this?
So pretty much every secret except Ivanova's is something that's going to come up again.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't seen the last of the stems, that they're still cooking that. Whatever is going to happen with Franklin with that has not happened yet. We've just addressed the fact that it's a concept for him a couple times. And
Yeah.
So Lanier's love for Delenn. Of course, Sheridan's and Delenn's relationship. That's just a story point that we're going to deal with. Marcus has said that he is devoted and not going to lose another woman that he's devoted to. They've played with the relationship between him and Ivanova, but maybe there's something with Delenn as well. What else? Garibaldi confessing that he does not know what would happen if he ever lost control.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound good.
No, we have Jakar focused less on ceremony and more on action, working with security. We have Londo, who, on the one hand, doesn't seem to have a lot of respect for the Minbari rebirth ceremony, but on the other hand, he is now taking steps to reduce shadow influence on Centauri Prime.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that aspect of the storyline. I thought it was kind of important. Enough that I should have brought it up because he's responsible for the Centauri rising in power with the help of the shadows. Now he's trying to reduce the aspect of the shadows in Centauri life, and I'm curious to see how that's going to play out because there are a couple different ways that could go as far as how everything, the relationship there and the Centauri's role in the galaxy and everything. But one thing I did want to mention is that in Pulp Fiction, the guy tells a story of a man robbing a liquor store over the phone. On the phone, he says he has a hostage there, and if they don't do something, he's going to kill the hostage. And the whole thing was a prank. Who doesn't matter if there's a hostage or not. And so Mollari is saying, I've given you a poison, and if you don't do this and this and this, I could give you the other half of the poison. He doesn't have to have actually given Rifa the poison. They did the same thing with Jakar in the first season. They told him that he had ingested some sort of tracking device. There's no tracking device. So I just think it's funny. I think personally that Mollari probably did give him half of the poison. Maybe not first season Mollari, but definitely third season Mollari. I feel like is very likely to have done so. But yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene is important because he does say, we're returning to the old ways when poison was the weapon of choice. And he says, one of the reasons we'd have done this is one of us is going to kill the other. Because that's what the old ways mean.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, I'm getting there first. So we also know that there are other Night Watch people out there. So not necessarily on the station, but Night Watch is not over.
Right. We are explicitly told that there are other cells and other branches of Night Watch still active, just on the back burner.
I think that's about it at this point.
Okay. Well, we are going to be back next week with another episode. This is going to be Sic Transit Vir. Although if we were Latin, we'd be saying Vir, but his name is Vir. Sic Transit Vir, which the title has been intriguing to me for a while now, especially whenever Vir left the station for a while. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is going to be when he comes back. But of course, we have seen him since. So yeah, possibly a Vir-focused episode next week on April 15th, 2026. So until then, you should send us your thoughts about the episode and your thoughts about our thoughts about the episode. And there are lots of ways you can think these thoughts and send them to the episode. And Blaine, what's the first one?
First one is to send email to Babylon5 30 years later at gmail.com using either letters or numerals. We have captured all 4 variants.
We have, because we are clever like that. You can also go to either of the websites where the show is hosted and leave a comment on this or any other episode posting. And the first of those is my website, which is johnreadscomics.com. There is no H in posting.
You can also post on Bureau42.com. You don't need to create an account. You can just comment and put your name right on that particular comment when you make it.
You don't have to put your name, but it's usually best if you put your name. That way we know that it's you. You can put somebody else's name, though, if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll just get the credit for it when we announce the feedback.
Right.
And read it in our feedback episodes.
In our feedback episodes, which we are definitely making because we have had feedback and it's been great. So you can also leave a review for the podcast. We do check Apple Podcasts as a matter of course, but if you want to leave your review at any podcatcher, that is fantastic. Just let us know that you have done so through one of the other means if you would like to have your review read and thanked on the air.
And the last of the effective ways to get in touch with us is to leave comments on the YouTube posts that go with these. So everything is automatically cross-posted. You can just post your comments there, and again, we will read them and respond.
I like the how he describes it as the last effective way to get in touch with us. There are lots of ineffective ways to get in touch with us. I mean, you can try lots of other things, but these are the ways that we can guarantee pretty much that we're going to hear from you. I mean, if you want to throw stones toward our houses, I guess that's one way to try, but it's not going to have the best return of your investment.
No, might be more effective than smoke signals or carrier pigeons or semaphore.
Yeah, I don't want to do semaphore. If I'm going to do 4, I'm going to do the whole 4, not just a semaphore. So we are going to be back in a week with Seek Transit Veer. So thank you all very much for listening.
And good eating to you.